Hi everyone, Brandon here with Post Perfect Productions, bringing you my first personal top 10 list. For my first list, I'm going to be going over some of the best video game villains from my gaming experiences, so if you don't see your personal favorite on this list, then educate me. Leave a comment below with your favorite villains in gaming. Any story's villain generally holds as much value as the protagonist himself, setting the stage for the hero's purpose and providing character development, which is a key component in the creation of an immersive, relatable story. By providing conflict, the villain is essentially creating the story. Without this conflict, a game would simply be a collection of menial tasks with no clear objective or story arc. For this list, I'm going to lay down some ground rules. Only one villain per franchise, and honestly, if it weren't this way, a lot of villains from one franchise would dominate this list. Also, no grunts, and that means no characters like Goombas from Mario or Waddle Dees from Kirby. The villains on this list will be a major antagonist in their respective games. Oh, and spoiler alert. If you haven't played these games and you plan on doing so, turn this shit off now, because we're going to spoil some things. Alright, with all that said, let's get right into it. Coming in at number 10, we have Sadler from Resident Evil 4. Now I know what all of you are thinking. Really? Not Wesker? Well yeah, for a few reasons. First off, in Wesker's respective games, while he was pretty badass, he didn't act quite so smug and crazy as Sadler, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Additionally, Wesker in Resident Evil 5 was the only game we could really see him in action. While it was cool, the feeling I had while playing Resident Evil 4 and seeing Sadler just barely escaping my grasp every chapter in was something infuriating to me, but it made me enjoy the journey even more. In Resident Evil 5 or any of Wesker's other games, I never got this feeling of pursuit. Now Sadler, on the other hand, would intercept your communications to talk a little shit, he would show up at random points to tease you and throw a challenge your way, and he always had some crazy stuff to say that made you want to put a 9mm right through his head. Oh, and also, bear in mind that I've only played a handful of Resident Evil titles, so there's that. Anyway, okay, I'm really gonna piss off the fanboys with this one. That's right, number 9 is Seymour from Final Fantasy X. Now, I didn't pick Sephiroth because he wasn't the better villain, it's simply because he's not my favorite villain. Now this guy is a fucking asshole to the core. He is introduced to the party as this pope figure that's supposed to be revered throughout the land to bring peace to the world of Final Fantasy X, but as fate would have it, he sets his sight on the gullible and innocent summoner Yuna that's traveling with you, and happens to be the love interest of the main character. After singling her out to mess with, he summons her to the land of the Guado where he asks her to marry him. Well, after killing Seymour very early on, he doesn't just die, he comes back in human form to kidnap her and force her to marry him anyway against her will. Not only this, but Jesus Christ, you have to fight this guy like 5 times and it never gets any easier. From simple forms to super cheap ones, he's always willing to test your might and show you that you underleveled prior to the fight. On top of this, he talks down to everyone, and his own goal is to become the physical embodiment of sin. What a guy.
Here's a real high-class bout. Now go!
And number 8 is the Devil from Cuphead. If you haven't played Cuphead and you enjoy platformers or shoot-'em-ups, then you are really missing out. The difficulty of the game makes it rewarding, while the quality and aesthetic of this game makes it charming enough to want to play again and again. The premise of this game and the Devil's involvement is that you, Cuphead, bet a little too much at the Devil's casino and couldn't pay up, so to save your own ass, he demands you claim the souls of all those in the land that also owe him. I always thought it was a bit sadistic that you were taking all the souls of these seemingly innocent people and creatures. The reason he belongs on this list is because of the struggle to get to him. Every boss in this game is harder than the last, and you know by the end of the game you have to fight the man himself, and boy, I knew that was going to be one hell of a fight. Not only did you end up fighting the devil in a drawn-out and difficult battle, you had to fight his dice head lackey and his sick, twisted gauntlet of mini-bosses. This whole game is full of small, intricate details, and one of those is after every defeated boss, you're literally presented with the contract to their souls. Now that's some dark shit for a game that presents itself on the surface as an animated and otherwise happy game. Coming in at number 7, we have Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. This is a guy that lost his luster in the move over to 3D, as with the rest of the series I might add. However, I will not forget the feeling of defeating him after one of the many worlds in this game, and him cowardly running away in a damaged flaming ship and chasing after him. I'm 200% sure that I'm not the only one who tried to catch him before he disappeared off screen each time. The whole game is basically you waiting for the moment to back this scared little bitch into a corner so you can finish him off for good. In Sonic 1, after defeating the final boss, you can even hit him one more time before he escapes, watching his ship set fire as he seemingly falls to his death. The drive to get him was real. For example, in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, after the flying ship level, you even board a spacecraft literally holding on to the side to try and keep him from escaping. This is how you show ambition from characters in early games. This series saw a return to form with Sonic Mania. This game took everything that fans loved about the previous titles and expanded on it tenfold. Not only did you have Dr. Robotnik up to his usual tactics, but the Eggbot bosses were a great touch as they all had a unique personality and individual combat technique. Robotnik will always be one of my favorites, even if Sonic Team would rather constantly ruin our childhood. And next up at number 6 is King K. Rool, a beloved villain from one of my favorite games. Every iteration of this guy is phenomenal. You had Standard K. Rool, Captain K. Rool, K. Roolenstein, and the boxing King K. Rool in Donkey Kong 64. The mannerisms and goofiness of this villain is something I always thought was very unique and charming, making him a very memorable character for myself and many others. If you ask me, his inclusion in the Smash Bros. Franchise was long overdue. King K. Rool gets the number 6 spot because of all the unique moments of when you encounter him, as I mentioned before. In the first Donkey Kong Country, you have no idea who your main antagonist is until you reach him, and when you do, it's different than any other boss fight up until that point. The fight is difficult enough for a kid, but then he goes and fakes his death, going as far as to play a fake roll of credits and getting right back up to cheaply hit you right when you think he was defeated. This is a dirty move that always stuck with me. I mean, what kind of kid reads the credits? It seems that older games knew how to make their villains look like douchebags without any dialogue, and this is something I think we lack today. For example, in Donkey Kong Country 2, when you approach Captain K. Rool, he stands ready to fight with Donkey Kong tied up in front of him, and right before you fight, he makes sure to shoot Donkey Kong a few times before he goes off screen just to be a dick. He will always remain in my book as one of the better Nintendo villains. For number 5, we have Doorman from Shadow of the Colossus. I haven't played another game that can express the feelings of amazement that this one does before even the first line of dialogue. Shadow of the Colossus knows how to make the player feel immersed and into their quest. Upon entering the temple at the beginning of the game, you're introduced to Doorman, a god who has been locked away, with his mortal essence being scattered into 16 beings throughout the land. He offers you a deal to destroy these beings and he will restore your girlfriend, wife, whatever, back to the living. What he doesn't tell you is that he is just going to betray you in the end, and all your efforts were just to revive himself. After defeating the 16th Colossus, you're attacked by the dark stringy things one more time and return to the temple. While you were gone, some other people have come to visit the temple looking for you. Upon arriving, your character is completely worn out and barely able to move, and the others there with you are casting judgment upon you as the fragments of Doorman rise up in humanoid form to take over your body. After they attempt to kill you, Doorman reaches full form and you take control of him as he tries to kill those in the temple. While all that is crazy enough, I think the moment that made this so memorable is how the game tells such an incredible story of anguish and hardship through the final scene. Wander, sword through his body, keeps trucking on toward his dead significant other. Then the game switches to first person to show just how out of it and tired he is. Briefly after this, he falls short in defeat, and it seems as if this whole thing were for nothing except to bring Doorman back to life and realize his betrayal. With very little words spoken in this last portion, it is still one of the heaviest moments in any of the games I've ever played, making Doorman the number 5 piece of shit on this list. Number 4 is Asgore from Undertale. When I was making this list, I debated between Asgore and Flowey from Undertale, but in the end I picked Asgore because of the path to get to him and his demeanor when you do find him. In this game, you are dropped into the underworld, or the world of monsters, and along your journey, you find that these monsters are not bad guys at all, but the only way to get back to the world of humans is to kill the king of monsters, Asgore. This whole game is full of moral decisions, choosing whether you want to kill your foes or spare them. Every single monster in this game has their own unique personality, quirks, and jokes, making it harder to be the hero and kill off monsters to save yourself. But as you trek along, you start to wonder who the monster really is, and this feeling gets stronger and stronger as you approach the final stretch to get to Asgore, where all the monsters all come together to tell you a story of another human who once existed in this land. They tell you that they have collected the souls of 6 others, and with the 7th, they can finally leave the underworld. The way they tell this is enthralling because they all tell it to you as if they were excited to finally be a part of a world that isn't just inhabited with monsters. Even going as far as to say, "Aren't you happy?" When you finally approach Asgore, he has his back turned to you, just admiring the flowers in his garden, and when he turns around to see his audience, the look on his face changes. There is a somber silence until he slowly says, "Come with me," followed by a short dialogue, and finally he reluctantly fights you. But just the reluctance is something that stuck with me in this game, because who is the real villain here? Everyone is just trying to do what they believe is right, just like in real life. And it's hard to fault someone for that, but sometimes you have to fight for your beliefs and your people. It will be hard to follow this one up. Number 3 is Shao Kahn. Released in 1992, no arcade game was more popular or infuriating than Mortal Kombat, sparking a flame in the hearts of many and setting the course for many in the same franchise and for fighting games in general. This game went on to inspire the 1995 film production of Mortal Kombat and its 1997 sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. In addition, this game series prompted the game rating system we have today, and nothing embodies the violence, frustration, and excitement surrounding Mortal Kombat more than the final boss of this arcade game, Shao Kahn. At a time when the internet wasn't readily available and game walkthroughs were not a thing, the only people you had to turn to for help were the other kids at Pizza Hut playing with you. Shao Kahn was and is an absolute prick. Every iteration of this game including him, he's always been a cheap, dirty fighter that was irritating to say the least. However, all of those pale in comparison to his appearance in the original arcade titles. This asshole would just shoulder charge you until you died, and you were just stuck in the most horrible hit stun that could ever be conceived in any fighting game ever. I personally remember yelling at the arcade machine, and I had friends that would get so angry they were throwing things, breaking controllers, punching inanimate objects, and yelling at the top of their lungs. What more can be said? Fuck this guy.
Flawless victory.
Alright, number 2. No villain list would be complete without the mention of Bowser. Bowser is a timeless character who, despite multiple reworks throughout this franchise's lifespan due to improving graphics, game quality, and various story arcs, continues to exemplify what happens when a reoccurring villain works in a series. With a character like Bowser, the protagonist's mission is clear-cut: destroy the villain and save the princess at all costs. With a classic series like Mario, this formula just works. Despite Bowser's brute and dumb demeanor, Bowser and Mario continue to complement each other as villain and hero through their charming and silly antics. What would Mario be if not for Bowser? Bowser has appeared so many times in so many ways. There is no version of Bowser that is better than another, and this is largely due in part to Nintendo. They have created 2 of the most consistent and memorable characters. Bowser always seems to fail, but never gives up. He always kidnaps the princess and sets up this elaborate path for you to find him in record time. Bowser deserves our spot for number 2, but I can think of one other hated, loved, and well-painted villain more memorable than Bowser. That's right, number 1 is none other than Gruntilda from Banjo-Kazooie. This character makes herself present throughout the entire game, taunting you with every turn and giving you a sense of urgency to go and beat her ass. From her annoying voiceover speaking in rhymes to her goofy look, Gruntilda is a fun, love-to-hate villain that makes the top of this chart. Gruntilda sets the tone and character development throughout this endearing game, while giving Banjo a clear and ever-present objective: to save his dear sister from the clutches of this witch. Throughout your journey, you have to learn all of her dirty little secrets from her sister, Brentilda. And listen close, because you will need every bit of information she tells you at the end of the game, where in lieu of a boss fight, Grunty makes you play a sadistic board game where you have to recall the details of your journey. The stakes are: beat the board game, you get your sister Tootie back, and if you lose, you get dunked in lava. Seems fair, right? If you manage to do so, she cowardly runs off to the top of her tower where you follow her for the final battle. And just adding to the character development of the villain, you have to talk to her brewing pot, who basically tells you he's tired of her shit and offers to launch you to the top of the tower so you can kick her ass and get rid of her for good. After winning the fight and releasing the final Jinjo to kill her, she timidly bites her nails as she's waiting for the finishing blow. And what do you know, she was a coward the whole time. Just another reason to hate her. Grunty saw a return in Banjo-Tooie, which was also a great game, but lacked some of the charm of the first. And then of course we had another less than reputable title whose name we do not mention here. But nevertheless, no game I've ever played has done a better job of painting a character as the villain than this one. Well, that was our list of the top 10 video game villains. What did you think? Did we miss any? Did you agree? Disagree? Let me know in the comments. If it's a game I haven't played, I would love to try it. Change my mind if you disagree. And don't forget to smash that motherfucking like button if you enjoyed the video. This is Brandon with Post Perfect Productions, and I'll see you guys next time.